friends, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope that you're all waking up to a lot of thankfulness in your lives. We do need to wake up every day with reasons to be thankful for. And waking up is a reason in itself to be thankful for. I would like to say that today's topic was suggested by one of the people that we have and has been listening to the program on Sunday mornings at 8:30. And that, of course, would be Morning Coffee for the Soul. You are all welcome to join us every Sunday morning, Eastern Standard Time. I know it's a little early. I know it's a little hard to wake up Sunday this early, and especially for those who live in the western part of the country, but I hope you can always look afterwards. The topic today is suicide. And why on the Morning Coffee for the Soul are we talking about a topic that is generally taken as such a heavy topic to talk to? Such a topic that most people would not want to hear about. Well, first of all, we need to talk about this topic because it is something that is happening so often in the world. It is something that is becoming, I would say, kind of an epidemic. And every 40 seconds, someone dies of suicide in the world. And that is not to be taken lightly. That is not to be taken, what would I say? That is not something that we can just ignore. Something needs to be done. We have to say, if we are to do something about this, we need to know the warning signs. We need to know what it is and why this is growing so much, especially for those who are part of the Spiritist doctrine. So we need to know this is happening a little bit too much. This is happening in a way that we need to know the warnings. I think we all know that suicide, 90% of people who commit suicide, most of them have some kind of mental illnesses. That is 90%. And out of those mental illnesses, most of them have depression. Now, if we don't know someone that has attempted on their own lives or who has tried suicide, we know someone who has depression or who has had depression. And perhaps this person is you. Depression has been so prevalent in all ages that now children have depression as well. So we have to talk a little bit about this. Depression is that self-abandonment. Depression is not something that, I think in the old times, depression was taken as a romanticism, as a melancholic state. But it was never taken as a mental illness. And now we know that depression is a mental illness. And it is something worthy of a lot more conversations, a lot more attention, and especially treatment. We know that suicide, among people from 15 to 35 years of age, suicide is the third cause of death in the United States. Sometimes we could even think maybe it's someplace else. Maybe it's someplace that, too far from me. But it isn't. Here in our home, between 15 and 35-year-olds. Think about it. That is incredible. When I found out about the statistics, I was appalled to know that so many people were not having something inside of them there that they were taking their own lives. And that is the third cause. And we're taking accidents out, and we're taking some illnesses out. But third cause of death. Now, I'd like to ask you, how do you treat your pets? I think for those who have pets, and that's a strange question, but if you have a pet, I have a dog, and I love pets. How do you treat your pet? May it be a cat, a dog, a snake, a ferret, whatever it is that you have. How do you treat your little pet? Well, most likely you treat your pet with care. You treat your pet with love. You wouldn't allow someone to yell at your pet. You wouldn't leave it alone for too long. You would really treat your pet with all the love that you have, correct? Regardless if you're sick, if you're doing well, if you're at work, if you're at home, you will treat your pet with love. Well, let's pretend that you are your own little pet, that you have inside of you someone that needs the same TLC. How are you treating yourself? How much are you loving yourself? And I ask you that because sometimes we treat our pets better than we treat ourselves. And we give them the love that we find somewhere, but we don't give that love to our own self. So I like to say, I will take myself for a walk. You know what I'm saying? I will take myself, I will feed myself the best food that I can. I will give myself time to play with others. You see, kind of, when I do that to my pet, I have to do that to myself as well. And why I'm doing this, why am I saying that? Is because too many of us are putting ourselves so in the back burner. We are not putting ourselves where we deserve to be. And that is beings that were created by God, beings that are so ready to be enjoying this experience of being alive and not even thinking remotely about ending one's lives. Now, my daughter once told me a story of someone that was contemplating suicide, and this boy had, he had made all the plans. He had bought rope. He had bought, the necessary things to hang himself over the weekend because his parents were going to be away. His parents were leaving on a Saturday morning and would be back on Monday. So he needed that space to do what he was contemplating to do because, life stopped having a meaning to him. So what happens is on Saturday, his family left and he was home alone. And then he prepared everything for the act. And when he was about to take his own life, the family's cat just passed through. And he looked at that cat and he realized that if he killed himself, the cat would not be with food or no one to be cared for that weekend until his parents came back. And so he decided not to take his own life because the little family pet was walking around and he did not want the cat to suffer because of it. Now think about it. This is and he did not commit the act. He actually called a friend and everything ended up just fine. And just fine in a means where he got the help he needed. So this story tells us that we need a reason to be alive. We need something. We need something a little bigger for us to say, I'm worth to be here, alive. And now Kardec, in the Spirits book, on question 943, he actually asks a question to the spirits. And this question to me is amazing because he wants to know, deep inside of you, sometimes you get that feeling, that awareness, that deep awareness of life, just without any apparent reason. Sometimes you feel the need. You say, why am I alive? Why am I here? Why does my heart ache so much? What is missing? In that question, when Kardec asks us, he asks the spirits, and he says, why do we get that feeling? And that is the same feeling of those contemplating suicide, those who think that maybe it's time to just put an end to all of this. And where does that feeling come from? So he asks exactly that. And the beginning of the answer says 3 components where people feel this way. And the spirits say idleness, lack of faith or conviction, and satiety. So those 3 things they form the perfect storm for one to want to end their own lives. So let's dig in a little bit about each of those things. If you experience idleness, and we know idleness is, happiness is incompatible with idleness. A person who is, let's say, sloth, who has nothing to do, who does nothing. There's a phrase in Brazil, I don't know if you know, but it's what is it? When you're doing nothing, it's kind of like a workshop of the devil in your mind. And get me if you know the exact phrase, but it's kind of like that. So when you're still, when you're doing nothing, when you're not being productive in some way, your thoughts tend to drift and not to a good place. So that is why Aristotle said happiness and health are incompatible with idleness. Now think about how strong of a statement that is, because your mind does drift. Now Socrates, he would say that not only the one who does nothing is idle, but one who could be employed at a better, more productive labor. So think about it. you can't give the excuse that, well, I'm not idle. I'm playing video game for the past 20 hours. Well, could you have been using that time for something productive, something better, something that will make you grow? So that would mean, according to Socrates, that would mean that you're still idle. You're still really not doing anything. You're not being productive. So you can say, oh, Debbie, but then we have to be productive all the time. We don't have to take any time to just do nothing. Not what I'm saying. Idleness is a state, a person who decides or is imposed on of doing nothing. So, or not just doing nothing, but doing something that is very, very not productive. You need times, of course, you need pockets of idleness in our times. That is when we have time to listen. We have time to get ideas. We have time to listen to God's answers to our prayers. So that is a time that we do need. So idleness in small amounts is necessary. And also, that doesn't mean work, that you have to work continuously. And the work doesn't mean physical labor only. We need to work anything that makes you a productive person is work. So we have to think, if I'm writing a poem, a poetry book that is going to be, someone else will be reading, and they will be, I guess they will be touched by your poetry, then yes, you're being productive, you're working. So it doesn't mean, because a lot of people say, oh, once I retire then, and if I decide to do volunteer work, that's not work. Of course that's work. Anything that's making you a better person is work. So what the spirits are saying is, idleness is a component for you to lose the taste of life when you are not being productive, in a way that when we're productive, we feel good. Usually at the end of the day, when we did a lot of things that we felt productive, wow, I accomplished all of these things, you feel good. When at the end of the day you say, all I did today was just watch soap operas all day, we don't feel that good. We kind of take that, we internalize that feeling, and that's the idleness part of it. Then he says about lack of faith. That's the second component that the spirits will answer. When you start losing your motivation, your conviction, that I always like to say that it's not, try not to doubt yourself, but do not doubt him. Do not doubt God. And when Kardec answers that, when Kardec asks, and the spirits say, do not, for any reason, lose your faith. Work on your faith. Some people say, I don't have any faith, but I wish that I did. Oh, who among us didn't ask someone to pray for them at some point? Because maybe we know that the person has more faith than we do. Sometimes we do that. Sometimes I know I've asked my mom to pray for me sometimes. Something was happening and I asked for reinforcement from friends. So what I do is I pray, but then sometimes we have this thing where we start not believing in our own prayer. So at times we believe that people around us have more faith than we do, and then we start to ask them to pray for us because their faith is more solid. Well, faith is something that you have to work on. Faith is something that is constant work. If you're not a person who has solid faith, well, maybe you're a spirit that is a little younger than someone who has, or maybe that you haven't worked on your faith as much. So when Kardec, comes and brings this to us, that we have to work on our faith. And without faith, we're so more open to commit suicide, to think about, to idealize suicide, because there is nothing else. There is no one to help us. Now, when we look at the story, when Jesus is on the boat with the disciples, and, well, he actually goes out to pray, and then he sends his disciples on a boat to go and cross the lake. And he says, I will see you later. Let's resume this very shortly. Well, the disciples go, the 12 go, and now when they leave and they take the boat and they go, you got to think that they had to have faith, because how would Jesus get there? That was the only boat. They didn't even think about, well, Jesus said he would meet us later, but yet he's sending us. And he's sending us in a direction that there's, they get into a storm and they continue to roll, and they still go where Jesus, told them to go. So it shows that they had faith. But then at one point, there was this storm, and Jesus starts walking, and they actually look in the middle of the night, and they see this shadow, and all of them start thinking it's a ghost. They all, no, you could think of these 12 men, strong fishermen, and all yelling and screaming and afraid of seeing a ghost. But then all of a sudden they see that it isn't a ghost, it's Jesus. And he's walking on waters. How he did it, I have no idea. But we know that there's an explanation for this. It's not a miracle on the sense of the word. And I'm sure we have to study a lot more of these phenomena, but they will all come to light one day. But Jesus, the point is, Jesus comes. And he comes and he sees Peter, and he asks for Peter to come out of the boat. You know, he just says, you know, Peter, come to me. And when Peter goes, and we have to say, would the others have gone? Would you have gone? We like to say that we would, that we have enough faith that if Jesus showed up right now in your house and says, come to me, follow me, I'm going to show you the way. We would like to say that we would just go without any questions. But in reality, would we really? In reality, do you think that you would leave, you would not look back at your belongings, at your family, at the things you still have to do that day, and just go blindly? So we can't judge others, because sometimes we bring that upon ourselves, this little lack of faith. So anyway, so Jesus, you know, calls, and he goes and he starts walking on the water as well. But at one point, he loses focus. At one point, Peter loses focus. He doubts, and he starts sinking. And of course, Jesus helps him, you know. And this brings the point of having faith. When we stray from our focus, when we stray from thinking that really the spiritual life is really what matters and not this body and these things, then that's when we start doubting. That's when we start losing our faith. That's when we start, and we can feed this thought of suicide. Because if something doesn't work out the way we want, then we think it's not worth for us to live. But when we think that this is just a little part of an entirety of life, then we get that again. We get that faith working inside of us. Because everything passes. There is absolutely nothing in the world that remains. 2 seconds ago is no longer. And 2 seconds ahead will always be present. You see, every time that we think of future, when we get there, it becomes present. So we're always in the present. And the present is always changing. Everything changes all the time. So it's a shame to say that suicide would be really a permanent solution for a temporary problem. Correct? And it's a permanent solution in a way, because you would end that pain for such a brief part of a second. And then you would awake in such a hardship of possibilities. It would be so much worse. Because, you know, and the Spiritists will say that, in Spiritism we know that that is the worst act you can commit. Because that act, not only your problem will not be solved, but now you would still be alive. And now you would have less control of what you could have done. Now you really have no choices. So it's nice for us to know that working our faith, working on idleness, are two of those three things that Kardec says that we can do to prevent any thoughts of suicide. And the third is satiety. What's satiety? Have you ever eaten to a point where you felt ill, that you ate and you obviously knew that it was too much? Well, that's someone who was so full that they longed for nothing else. It is actually above what they could have eaten. And that is the problem, because satiety is when we have so much that we look for nothing else. You kind of lose any perspective of what else you want in life. And that's why we see so many countries that have a lot of money, and we see people, those a lot of times tend to have very high numbers of suicide. Either both sides of the spectrum, those who have absolutely nothing and then those who have too much. You see, that's the thing. When you have idleness in your life, when you have nothing to do, again, that's the old saying, it's a devil's workshop. When I am still, when I'm quiet, when I do nothing. And I'm not saying pockets of time that we need to do nothing. We need to stop and listen. I'm saying idleness in its general sense. but also lack of faith. And again, lack of faith can be resolved with work. And we work. Faith is something that we have to work on. You don't just all of a sudden trust plenty. You work on that trust. And again, you can doubt yourself. And I would be very sad if you doubt yourself, because you are creatures, we are all creatures created by God. But if you are to doubt yourself, do not doubt Him. Do not doubt God, because He does exist and He does not doubt us. And that is so beautiful to know. Because even if we don't pray to Him, if we don't even like Him or acknowledge that He exists, well, He does. And He loves us the same way. He does not love someone who prays more than someone who doesn't pray. He loves everyone the same. But it is for us, it is for our benefit to work this prayer, because that will fortify our own faith. And the satiety, when we have everything. We see kids these days that have the iPhone, whatever, they have the 7, but they want the 10. They have this need for new things constantly. And have you seen nowadays when you give children a gift during Christmas time, their excitement lasts so much less than back in the day. Why? Because they're already looking for the next package. They have 50 different presents to open. Whereas, at least in my time, you have maybe 2 or 3 little packets, the presents boxes. So you have to distribute that time to open that present and really enjoy that present. And sometimes we would get one present. But that was it. That was everything we waited for the whole year, to open that one present at Christmas time. And we would enjoy that present all year. But now when you have 50 presents, you have to divide your attention. And it's impossible to like all 50. Because you know what? Next month is your birthday. And you get another 50. And kids begin to not have things that excite them. Not have things that really have meaning for them. And that is the problem. That is the problem with satiety. You have it all. You have no wish to do anything else. We see that a lot of famous people, a lot of people that have had it all, a lot of them actually go on to even drugs, because they need something to excite them. And you see, so Kardec is amazing in saying this, that this question is so beautifully elaborated. Now, where does that feeling come from, of feeling nothing? Well, lack of faith, satiety, and idleness. So when we work these 3, you can be certain that you have a much more solid sense of self, because you're not idle. And some people say, well, I'm retired. There's so much you can do out there. Do not be idle in your life. Sometimes we say, well, what about satiety? Can I not have nice things? Can I not have 50 presents? Do they bring you the happiness that you're looking for? If they do, then continue to do what you're doing. Who am I to say anything? But the problem is when you now belong to the material things, and the material things no longer belong to us. So that's when you've reached satiety. That's when you've reached that point where you have to say enough is enough. What can I start giving them? Now that I have so much, what can I give? And I'm not just saying material things. Sometimes we say attention. Now we see a lot of people that get so much attention that they lose track of who is really their friend. Who really means to be and who really wants to be with them, and not because of their fame. So that is very important. I'd rather have a few friends, but I'd rather have friends who will yell at me, who will put me on my place, who will tell me things, or have thousands and thousands of people that, quote unquote, adore me, but really they don't like me. They adore the image that I'm selling. And again, we see a lot of people that have this fame, have this, and sometimes they start seeing themselves as gods, or they start losing that love, that genuine love that friends and a few people can bring to us. So again, when is enough enough? So again, friends, we have just a little time, because right after this, I'll be talking on my own personal Facebook, but that's in English. That's in Portuguese. So I have to end it here. But think about it. For any of you, for anyone who's even slightly thinking about ending their own lives, or if we know someone, read the Spirit's book. I doubt you will. My goodness, that is such a lifesaver. If I could only talk a little more about what a lifesaver that book can be. But if you notice someone is thinking, talk to them, be available, get help. There is nothing more strong than asking for help. There is nothing stronger than admitting your own feelings, than saying, you know, I'm sad. I need to cry. You know what? But I'm not going to cry alone. I'm going somewhere where I can cry. And maybe someone will just be there. They don't even have to say anything. I just need to cry with someone. And sometimes the someone could be our pillow. But it's so much better to be around people. And when you cry with someone that also needs a good cry, you end up laughing at the very end. You start hugging each other and you start really appreciating having someone to cry with. And that is why work is so important. Society is so important. To be around others, especially to be around others who long a little more. It is about what you can give, not what you can get. And that is the beauty of life. Friends, I'm going to tell you, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I'm going to say that it's going to be worth it. And remember this phrase, life is not going to be easy, but it is going to be worth it. It is so worth it. You are worth everything that anybody else is. You are not one bit less worth than anybody else. Thank you again. And I hope I can be here. If there's any topic suggestions, put it here. And I'm going to say hi now. Let me see who's here. I'm going to say hi to a few friends that I see. We have Monica. Hello, Monica. How are you? We have Teresa Castro, and you can say where you're from. Okay, Nora, Brazil. Good morning, Nora. We have Lina. Hello, Lina. Valdo Malaquias. What a beautiful player. He plays and sings, and oh my goodness. Luzia Santos is watching with us. Maza Fabiana is watching with us. We have Adilson Araújo. Hey, my friend. He is such an amazing person. Luzia Santos is here saying good morning. Good morning to you, Luzia. Marco Souza is watching. Good morning, Marco. Good morning, Lina. Hércules Fernandes, my friend from my heart. And we have Marie Martins is watching as well. Cleo Perlman. Rita Flor. Gratidão. Thankful. And I am thankful for you. Teresa Carapano, good morning, friends. Good morning, Teresa. And Vanessa Godoy is saying good morning, Vanessa, as well. And my other Vanessa as well. I have two Vanessas here. Vanessa Anceloni, good morning. Gratitude, Deborah, to choose such an important topic. A warm hug from Adil, so a very warm topic for you. And Alexa Dash is watching as well. Adriana André, good morning. And Mike Castro is watching. Alessandra, we have Alexandra Azevedo. Hello, Alexandra. Teresa is from Nashua, New Hampshire. Cold up there, Teresa? Oh, Vermont. Sorry about that. Yeah, Vermont. Teresa Castro. I met you in Inner Enlightenment Spiritual Society, where your dad played guitar. That's right. I did a few lectures there. That's right, Teresa. Oh my goodness, long time no see. And Alexandra's from Orlando, New Jersey. Thank you again, everyone. If you want any topic suggestions, you can leave it here. Otherwise, I'll think of something and I'll put it here. You're all welcome to see anything that you want to see in Portuguese. I'll be there now at 9 o'clock on my own. But the most important thing is to be here at Kardec Radio every Sunday and all the other days. We have amazing lectures. We have amazing studies. And again, at Kardec Radio, you can see, oh my goodness, you can learn so many things. You can be cleaning your house and just put that on your ear and listen. It's really an amazing station to have as an app in your phone. So thank you, everyone. I wish you all a blessed Sunday, and I hope I can be here with you at 8:30 next Sunday.